In many ways, belonging to a country is like having a name, right? There's a certain level of significance or certain kind of meaning that one's name might have, and one might earn to attain that kind of name and that kind of citizenship. Now, of course, on this channel, the Regal Change channel, and for those that are just joining, my name is Thaddeus. Here on this channel, we're participating in the building of the nation of Israel, spiritually speaking and biblically speaking. The nation of Israel, you can think about it as the metaphysical consciousness, whereas people that are actually grounded in spirit and in truth cohabitate on the spiritual level. So it's not necessarily metaphysical, but it is. Now, I personally am a citizen of the United States of America, and I like America a lot. I love this country. I love the ideals and the laws generally that have been placed, specifically the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. These are documents that I think are not necessarily looked at with utmost scrutiny. And so in today's video, what we're going to be talking about is how freedom without discipline means nothing. And freedom without creativity doesn't really mean a lot either. You have to have a combination of discipline and creativity in order to be fulfilled in freedom. Otherwise, freedom is just an empty space in the middle of the universe. It could be also a black hole to some degree. Freedom can be a black hole if you're not, how would you say, if you're not properly using the resources and materials available to you to build or create something for the betterment of life itself. So that's what happens is there's a black hole in the world. Most of the time this happens with people. People can be black holes, and in other videos I've talked about how narcissists can be black holes. And really what this comes down to is learning what it means to be an American, and learning what it means to act as an American. Think about your stereotypical American. Look back to the Revolutionary War. And for those of you that are all around the world watching this video, perhaps, this is going to be something that maybe you can just learn from. I think there's a lot to learn from the American government and the American system, but it's no secret that most of the government and most of the structures of society in America have been corrupted. I still think we need this kind of structure in order to maintain our society for the time being, but it's kind of like applying duct tape to a breaking dam. There's not going to be there's not going to be a whole lot that can stop the breaking of the dam, but for now we're able to duct tape it together with the structures that we've got until we figure out what's going to happen when the flood comes. And so what it means to be American, and I thought a lot about this recently. In fact, I've been trying to do this video for like 2 weeks, but I've never gotten around to actually making it because I didn't feel as though I had digested enough of the information. So now I feel as though that has been the case. I feel like I've digested enough of the information, and so I think what we're going to just do is go through the amendments, at least a few of them that stand out to me, and then kind of build off of that. So the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, you can think about the first 10 amendments as the Bill of Rights. And these are essentially the 10 commandments of America, but not necessarily for the spiritual speaking. Now, it's also important to note the history of the founders of the government. They were God-fearing men. And it's astounding to me that you got in the same room, you were able to get a bunch of God fearing men that were able to collaborate and negotiate proper terms and then agree to the following: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people, peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. I mean, that's just so immaculately written. It encompasses everything that's supposed to be about consciousness into one single amendment. Consciousness itself cannot thrive without freedom. It can't. It cannot grow without freedom. But in other ways, consciousness cannot be ascended. Like, you can't not ascend in your own consciousness without pain. And so this is one of the reasons why the freedom of speech is going to be so important. And I also have a Proverbs scripture here that I want to back up with this. It is Proverbs 15:1. It says, "A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger." This means that you can avoid conflict, and the fight that you do avoid, you're going to be able to, for sure, know that you can, if you can de-escalate the situation, you'll be able to conquer this fight. You won't even have to be, even, was it Lao Tzu or Sun Tzu? I can't remember who it was exactly, but the person that wrote The Art of War, I believe, said something more along the lines of, if you can subdue your enemy without violence, then you will always be victorious, something along those lines. And that's exactly what the First Amendment is designed to do. It's supposed to de-escalate the violence. It's supposed to provide freedom of information. And so, in a sense, we Americans are supposed to be able to get our gloves dirty, but we're able to also keep our hands clean in some sense, right? So we're able to look at the situation of what it means to be an American. We can say whatever the fuck we want here in America, and God, it's amazing. I mean, people will get offended, and we've gotten to the point to where some people will get so offended that you might lose your job. Like, that's how crazy it can get. But at the same time, this is what our society was founded on, and I think this is going to be, I think this should go for anybody, for everybody out there. The freedom of speech is absolute paramount to growth, because you can't have the freedom to think without a freedom of speech. You can't have that. So if you do not have the freedom to speak as you want and as you wish, even if it's not like the most like, even if it's not the most merry or cheerful, you could say, of of speeches, you can still say and do whatever you want, insofar as you are not abridging the freedom of people's speech, or to peacefully assemble as well. That's another one, peacefully assemble. This is a tricky one where it can be interpreted in certain ways, but people should be able to gather peacefully and be able to participate in a way that examines the highest, fullest potential of their life. This is one of the reasons why also the practice of religion, the freedom of religion as well, and not prohibiting the free exercise to practice religion. Well, what exactly is the point of that? Well, the point is, no matter where and who you are in America, the design, the ideal itself is that if you are free to practice a certain amount of religions or a certain amount of rituals, sooner or later, you're going to find and stumble into the one that actually works. You're going to actually be able to live a life that you can and have always dreamt of if you have that freedom and you actively participate in it. And number 2, Amendment 2, of course, is the well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, and the right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, of course, there's like state laws for this now where you have to go through a lot of different hoops in certain places. And fortunately, here where I'm at in Utah, in the state of Utah, we don't really have the strictest gun laws. And in fact, there's been studies where, such as like Texas, where the gun laws were less strict, there was less violence. Why? Because you don't know who's got who and who's got what. That's exactly why. And so you're supposed to treat people with respect and kindness and dignity. Otherwise, well, stuff can happen. And it's not necessarily because like people are actively aggressive. However, I do think in some way aggressiveness needs to be the default mode for most men. Actually, I would say all men, but it's not going to happen. Not today anyway. Aggressive, and when I say aggressive, I mean assertively aggressive, because so many people are just, they're so used to people not being pushed back. Like they're so used to people not pushing back that they feel as though they can just get away with whatever they want. And so you'll find that, especially if you're on the spiritual path, you'll find that there are a lot of people out there that it's so crazy. It's so insane. But there are a lot of people out there that will be passive aggressive after you're kind and courteous to them, and you like you have no idea what that just was. And what that is you're just, because usually when you're treating someone with respect, you say, look, I expect to be treated with respect. I expect to be treated the same way. And a lot of the times you can't really place certain boundaries with these kinds of people. Well, you can, but they're going to be walked on anyway. And so it's so important for you to be able to have the second. I'm a Second Amendment advocate here in the United States. I think that it should be acceptable for people to have and bear arms. I don't see a reason why not, because we live in a day and age where physical only, like the physical, the physicality, that's the word I'm looking for. The physicality of somebody, it's not going to be quite enough. Like, you might be the biggest guy on the block, but if somebody's got a gun, like, you're freaking screwed, man. Like, you are screwed. So, and everybody that has, like, this is something I've noticed that is mostly only in the United States out of the people that I've talked to around the world. But it's like, they don't realize here in the United States how much of a privilege it is to be able to go outside and feel safe. Like, feel like you don't need to, like, be on the watch for everything going on. Like, that's kind of a privilege. And giving a monopoly to the police in regards to violence, as Sam Harris has said, was, and I don't always agree with Sam Harris recently, but he did say this that I liked. Giving a monopoly to the police is one of the most important things that our country has done. But it's where you start to have like these defund the police or etc. Movements. It's like, do you really want that? Like, do you really want that? I don't know. Sometimes I do think I have read up on anarchy and the government of anarchy, where there is no government really, but anarchy isn't necessarily what people think it is. There's a lot more to be said on that topic, but perhaps in another video, and we'll focus more on the amendments again. Now, Amendment 3 and 4, I don't think are going to be the most important, but also, well, I mean, they're all important. These Bill of Rights are all important, but out of all the ones that I want to go through, Amendment 5 is one of the other ones I want to go through. So, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land of naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property. Okay, that's really important right there, but we'll come back to that. Life, liberty, or property, without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Okay, so I want to go to a witness. He will not be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. What exactly does that mean? It means that if you have the evidence of innocence, like, well, everybody's innocent until proven guilty, right? Again, that's one of the other really good things about our government is you are supposed to be, anyway, innocent until proven guilty. And so you can have a lot of people think whatever they want, but until there's actual proof, you're not going to be guilty. And when you are not, and not being deprived of life, liberty, or property, well, that's very important. And this, I think, was inspired by John Locke. If nobody knows who John Locke was, he was an American. And around this time period when all this was happening with the Revolutionary War and such. And John Locke had the philosophy of these three things: life, liberty, and property. It's like a man's right to have property in certain ways. And it's a man's right to own these things, because if you don't have this, if you don't have life, liberty, or property, then you're not going to have any kind of natural rights. And if you don't have natural rights as a human being, then you might as well not even be a human being. You're just going to be an animal. And you're going to be treated as such. Now, I think part of what it means to be an American also is to keep the animal mentality. That means be able to give the middle finger to the tyrants and be able to say, no, F you, and mean it. And then fight for it, and fight where you stand, and stand up for what you know to be true, what you know to be right. And this is something that many people do not really understand of part of what it means to be an American, because how do I even say this? It's like Americans have been stolen from their own identity. And part of the reason why Americans have been stolen from their identity is because America itself is such a, what's the term? It's kind of like a pot of gumbo. There's a little bit of everything in it. And that's what makes it so cool, but it's also what makes people it makes it hard for, excuse me, for people to have an identity because they don't exactly know like what to do. This is where discipline comes into play. If you cannot discipline your tongue, if you cannot discipline your mind, if you cannot discipline your body, I don't even think that you ought to be able to have certain certain ways to participate in the community to some degree. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, like, you can't participate, but it's like, why, if you are someone that, how do I, like, obviously if you're a criminal, right? If you're that's what a criminal is to some degree. A criminal is someone that causes, what, how do I say this philosophically and practically at the same time? A criminal is someone that causes unnecessary havoc, thievery, or any other kind of sin to society in which inhibits the way of life in a way that does not help people grow from the depths of hell. That's what a criminal is. And so if you're a criminal, then yes, I don't think you life, liberty, and property are not your forte. You like to take life, you like to take liberties, you like to take advantage of the liberties of others, and you, whatever you steal or you trespass, whatever, on property. Now, property is kind of a weird thing, right? Like, it's kind of weird to own like land. Like, when you really think about it, it's kind of strange to own land. But at the same time, it does kind of make sense because it allows people the opportunity to have a place to call theirs. Otherwise, you're always going to be in tribal mode. And so the laws in place for property are necessary. But the Fifth Amendment, we have a saying here in America where it's like, plead the fifth. If you plead the fifth, it means that you're not going to be a witness against yourself. And so you have the right to remain silent, basically. And it is plead the fifth, I think. Plead. Yeah. Yeah, you have the right to remain silent and not incriminate yourself. That's exactly what the Fifth Amendment is designed to do. So those are the three that stand out the most to me. But I mean, they're all these all of these 10 I see the 10 commandments. The 10 amendments are really important, and again, these are the 10 commandments of America, so to speak, but the Bill of Rights is supposed to be something that cannot be deconstructed, ideally. And unfortunately, in our government here in America, that's not going to be, I mean, time will only tell, but it's like there's a virus, a psychological parasite within the government, and it's spreading. And George Washington himself, in his farewell address, the first president of our country and the general of the United States during the war with Britain, he even said in his farewell address to be careful about favoring parties and creating parties. And the reason for that is because when you create parties down the line, there's going to be psychological and political loopholes in which parties can take advantage or take control unjustly in the government. And politics can be a very tricky business. And I think that we were not supposed to have this many amendments. I genuinely think that. I genuinely think that we were not supposed to have all of the different kinds of amendments that we do to this day. But I also understand the significance of all of these amendments that we've had. But overall, what we need to start practicing as Americans is we need to understand that without discipline, our freedom is going to be taken. And we're going to just let it be taken. And we're going to become bitter, angry, resentful as a nation, that is, if we don't get ourselves together. We got to let go of the Hollywood stuff. We got to let go of prioritizing celebrity gossip over the quality of our own lives. We must let go of all of the silliness of trying to just get clout, trying to get all of these meaningless things that really don't add up to anything in the end, because at the end of the day, you're going to have nothing to show for it but likes and comments. And what good is that? What good is entertainment? Like, think about the Romans. What happened during the time of the Romans, right? That was a very, like, there's a meme going around right now about this. It's like, what happened at the time of the Roman Empire when the Roman Empire started to collapse? Well, they focused on entertainment and eating and drinking and sex. And what are you looking at in America now? Well, number one, it's like all sexual. That's what's crazy. Like, for those that are not in America, I don't know what it's like outside of America necessarily. I've talked to people in France. I've talked to people in Mexico. I've talked to people in Puerto Rico. I've talked to people in Italy. I've talked to people in Africa. And they all say that it's kind of like the West in general. Like, but I don't know. Like, if it really is, then that's insane. I just know that we live in such a sexualized society that just, it was not meant to be this way, man. It was just not meant to be this kind of way. I mean, even today at the coffee shop, I was passing by and this woman was talking about how she didn't want to get married because she wanted to go be a stripper in Vegas. This was a few years ago, apparently. And now she regrets it because even though she's made a lot of money as a stripper, no guy wants to take her seriously. And she's like laughing about it. She's like, no man wants to take me seriously now. Ha 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 ha. Like this evil cackle laugh. And it's like, this is where America's going. This is where our women are going. And the men are encouraging this behavior by entertaining it. We just need to really start thinking about the foundation of what we are really here for. Like, we need to get back to our spiritual roots just as much as we need to get back to our historical. So with that being said, I hope this message was useful and insightful. And until next time, peace be with you.